Filmmaker, bringing this movie, Imperfect Sky.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having us. I'm representing everybody here.
Okay, and so how many roles do you play on this movie? Director, writer,
Okay, yeah, how many roles?
actor, what all did you do?
Sure.
Just give up the
Well, so it's a trick question because I don't play a role in the film, but behind the film, I'm everything. So I have a company called Imperative Pictures, and as a writer, director, cinematographer, editor, did I say that? And then usually the pre-producer and some of the line producing as well. I do a lot of stuff, so I have a lot of hats, but when it comes down to actually filming, the actual filming process, I'm just a director. So we try to do a lot. We have a 5-man team. So for a small film, we do 5 people, that's the entire team. And then the value of the small project is that we spend all of our time in pre-production so that we got every detail, every possible fathomable thing that can go wrong. We plan and we make sure that those problems will never happen before we get to set. We're super organized, and everyone has a very clear and concise role. So when we actually get to filming, the burden is off me, and although I feel like I'm doing a lot of stuff, I'm actually just doing one job, which is just directing at that time. And I'll go over a step further and say, as a cinematographer on the set, although I'm directing, I tend to do about 4 or 6 weeks of rehearsal with the actors and blocking and logistics and review about what's going to happen that day, what the energy level is going to be like, as well as the full-on discussions about every scene, every intention, every beat, so that when we get to the set, those things are all they're all exhausted, and the actor just can relax and do what he or she has to do, and I can get behind the camera and direct from a cinematic perspective.
So is this not your first film then?
Not my first film. So I did a film called Cages. It's a drama. I did another one called Imperfect, called Blind Malice. It's a psycho thriller. I've done a documentary on education about Hispanics and college. It's called Boys in Peril. So I've done a lot of different range of things, but my pocket is usually dry in the drama section.
What was your inspiration for this film? How did you come across the script?
So the script I wrote. So as a company that's called Imperative Pictures, what I try to do is try to identify what is the imperative of our time. And it's subjective, and there's millions of imperatives that we're dealing with in society. But for me, like, doing a film is like a 4-year stint, and in 4 years I could get a college degree. So I always ask myself, what am I going to spend the next 4 years of my life doing, and is it worth a degree in something? And is it going to be impactful for others? Someone's going to sit down and watch a feature film that's 2 hours out of their life. Is it going to be worth their time? So there's a lot of blockbusters, a lot of great stories out there, and that's sheer entertainment, and those people do it really well, and I won't compete against that. But I've set my goal to do a feature film that is a good story, but also has the imperative in there, so that when you walk away from a film of mine, you have learned and dove into the subject that is important in life, and you'll have a better understanding of it, a better compassion for those who are involved in it, and maybe even have an idea for a solution for it.
So you researched to find a topic of the time and then wrote a screenplay that you thought would be impactful.
Correct. Yeah. So Imperfect Sky, for example, it's a combination of drug addiction, which is, when I was starting to do the research on it, it was still, it's always been an issue, but truly, like, major actors were dying from heroin, and so it actually inspired me even more to make sure that I was following through with an imperative that truly was hot at the moment, if you want to call it hot. It's harder when you have an imperative that no one is talking about. So it was actually motivating to have current affairs happening circling around heroin at the time. The other issues that were covered in the story was education, the value of education, and family and love and relationship. So love and family, those are always a given for me. I always feel like whenever you always have that imperative, it's something that can always use improvement. But education is also one of those things that, was a good topic to weave into yet just a basic narrative story about brothers.
So did this project complete your 4-year cycle? Did it take 4 years from beginning to end?
Yeah, basically it was about a 4-year cycle. So writing, throwing the imperatives that I was going to write into a hat, mixing them up, building a story based on those ideas is about a year. Then from pre-planning to production to shooting it, getting it done, half a year, and then another year to put it together, test it, do scoring for it, and start it into the festivals. So probably I started this in 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, so here we are in our 3rd year. By the time it goes in distribution in November of this year, it'll be close to 4 years, close to a degree.
Now, this subject matter is very gritty, drugs. How do you go to work every day and be around that subject matter?
Well, writing a piece like that definitely takes its toll. You start going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and to truly kind of like engage in the characters that you're writing, you have to be in their spot and that space. And it is depressing, and it's sad. There's a lot of emotion. And for me as a writer, if I'm, a story's not just about one person, it's about multiple people and how they interact. So you're dealing, I'm holding in those cases multiple journeys and the weight of multiple journeys simultaneously in my heart. So it actually can be very emotional, very, very heavy. And it's actually, it feels very therapeutic to finally, cross it off at the end of every day when you're shooting it, to feel like you've done that scene and you've purged it. Unfortunately, then I have to go back and go through the editing process, so you're reliving it over and over again. But you can slowly start building a thicker skin. But then some days you just see it and it just hits you like it's your first time watching it too. So it's easy to kind of gloss over it, but to really do the good work, you have to get into it and get involved. And it means you are dedicated to the emotion that it should be providing to your viewer. So yeah, it's if you're feeling that though, if I can feel that as many times as I have, from the writing process to on set shooting it to post-production to see it in a theater, I hope that it is inspiring other people even just a little bit. I feel like it's hitting people if it's hitting me.
Now, the actors in this movie are I feel very believable, very realistic. How did you find your actors?
So I did a general casting to find my actors. A couple of them, like Tim Bagley and Amy Hill, who are on a lot of TV shows, they're fairly known. I put them in smaller roles because I didn't want to distract from the journey of the main character and their believability. I love when you can meet someone for the first time on screen. And in a case like Imperfect Sky, Blake Scott Lewis is the actor there who plays Skylar. And he's, first of all, a brilliant actor and 100% committed to his role. And so that's another reason why getting all the rehearsals and getting all the discussions and all the explorations about the scene and the character's intent way done in advance, so he could just be himself or his character on set and not be disturbed and just do the work in a private and a genuine, authentic way. Those kind of actors is what I'm gravitated to. And he was a no name, although he's done a lot of work and a lot of theater, a lot of training and very prepared. He's not overexposed in the screen. So it was an opportunity to show him off for the first time. And the other actors were the same way. So like when we did a festival just recently and he was able to attend it, and after the film he stood up and he talked, and the audience was telling me later that it took them many minutes to digest that was the same person, because the person that they was on screen had was a completely different person. It was far, far away in a different land, and this was another person altogether. So he really did transform. He lost like 35 pounds for the role. He did his homework. He was definitely completely enveloped in his journey. Even I felt like I had to relearn. I had to learn learn who he was yet a second time after he was done shooting and he came out of that role and he gained back his 35 pounds. And I met him again for some of the other shots we did in a couple of months later. He was a completely different person. So I had to. He definitely transferred his whole persona and his whole soul was into that role.
Now, as an experienced filmmaker, every project is different. What's something you learned surprisingly that you didn't expect
From this one? I think I learned in this film more than ever before, I learned to watch the story when we were shooting it. A lot of times as a cinematographer and a director, you kind of have, and not that you don't, I definitely have clear vision of what I want to do and how I wanted to see it on camera. But then there's the organic moments that happen. Once you've created the scenario, you get the lighting down, you get the blocking down, you get the acting down, there's still this organic thing that happens. And it's very easy to lose it. You can, if you say, oh, I've got a shot, I'm gonna stay on this, it's gonna be a certain way, and this is how it's gonna be, and you roll the camera and you let that, you stick with your guns on it. But there's I learned to think on the lens too. So if you see the movie, I feel like a lot of people say it's a more documentary. I tend to like forget what's going to happen and try to follow it instead. So there's a kind of a trust in it's not that you're not prepared because you're super prepared, but you have to trust that you need to be super aware that you don't know the next step as well as the audience, and try to feel that sensation of catching up to your own story, and it translates on camera. And that effect has been really interesting for this film, and I feel that comfort in shooting that way too, because it just feels more organic and more authentic.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your film. What other projects are coming up in the future?
So working on another one right now. It's called Adeline Hill. It's still in the casting phase, but I'll just say it's about a woman with dementia and a live-in nurse who has malice intentions.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming to NIP.
Great to be here.